Look around. Most people believe their problems come from the outside. The economy, other people, circumstances they can't control. But that's a lie. Your biggest enemy is not out there. It's in your head. It's the voice that whispers doubt, the fear that stops you from taking action, and the distractions that keep you from your true potential. The problem isn't the world, it's how your mind reacts to it. And the good news? You have the power to take control. But if you don't, your uncontrolled mind will own you, trap you, and keep you stuck in cycles of frustration and regret. Your greatest challenges aren't coming from the outside world, they originate from within. Every obstacle, every limitation you think exists is a reflection of your mind's current state. The battlefield is not your job, your relationships, or the economy. It's your own thoughts. The way you think, the way you process situations, and the way you respond to setbacks determine the level of success you will achieve. And here's the truth. An uncontrolled mind is the biggest enemy you will ever face. It is the difference between action and hesitation, confidence and self-doubt, growth and stagnation. Most people are trapped not because the world is against them, but because their own minds have convinced them of their limitations. How many times have you wanted to take action, but fear held you back? How often have you talked yourself out of an opportunity because your mind flooded you with self-doubt? This is what happens when your mind is not disciplined. When you let it run unchecked, it creates excuses, feeds fears, and stops you from becoming the person you were meant to be. The mind, when left untrained, is naturally negative. It seeks comfort over growth, safety over risk, and certainty over progress. That's why so many people never break free from their patterns. They live the same year over and over again, calling it a life. Not because they lack potential, but because their mind is working against them instead of for them. If you don't control your mind, it will control you, and it will lead you down a path of procrastination, fear, and mediocrity. Think about the most successful people you admire. What sets them apart is not just skill or luck. It's their ability to control their minds in the face of adversity. They don't let fear dictate their actions. They don't allow doubt to paralyze them. They have trained their minds to push forward despite discomfort. And that's the key, training. You wouldn't expect a weak, untrained body to lift heavy weights, yet most people expect an untrained mind to handle pressure, uncertainty, and high-level decision-making. It doesn't work that way. Your mind needs conditioning. It needs repetition. It needs discipline. And the first step to winning this battle is awareness. You have to recognize when your mind is sabotaging you, when it's feeding you lies about why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you're not good enough. Because once you become aware of these patterns, you gain the power to break them. You can interrupt the cycle and replace those thoughts with new, empowering beliefs. One of the most dangerous habits of an uncontrolled mind is its tendency to focus on problems instead of solutions. When you let your thoughts wander unchecked, they will gravitate toward worst-case scenarios, past failures, and fears about the future. But here's the secret. What you focus on expands. If you focus on fear, it grows. If you focus on obstacles, they multiply. But if you train your mind to focus on solutions, opportunities, and possibilities, your entire life shifts. This is not about blind positivity. It's about taking command of your thoughts. It's about recognizing that you have the power to shift your perspective in any situation. Challenges will come, setbacks will happen, but the way you respond is entirely up to you. You can let an uncontrolled mind keep you stuck, or you can take ownership, redirect your focus, and push forward with unstoppable determination. The question is, are you going to let your mind be your greatest enemy, or are you going to make it your greatest asset? The choice is yours. Just like an athlete trains their body for peak performance, you must train your mind to work in your favor. Mental conditioning is not something that happens naturally. It is something you must actively cultivate every single day. If you don't, your mind will default to patterns of fear, doubt, and hesitation, keeping you stuck in cycles of inaction. You've seen this in your own life. Times when you wanted to take a step forward but found yourself held back by overthinking, procrastination, or a deep-seated belief that you weren't ready. That's the result of an unconditioned mind. Your thoughts are powerful. They create your reality. If you constantly feed your mind with doubt, insecurity, and negativity, your actions will reflect those thoughts. You will hesitate to take risks, second-guess your abilities, and stay within the confines of what feels safe and familiar. On the other hand, if you deliberately train your mind to focus on confidence, discipline, and resilience, you will take action even in the face of uncertainty. This is why mental conditioning is crucial. Every day, you have to strengthen your ability to control your thoughts, just like an athlete strengthens their muscles through repetition. It starts with awareness, becoming conscious of the thoughts that run through your mind and catching the ones that are limiting you. Most people don't even realize how often they engage in negative self-talk. They tell themselves they're not good enough, that they'll probably fail, or that they don't have what it takes. And because these thoughts go unchecked, they become deeply ingrained beliefs. But beliefs are not facts. They are just thoughts you've repeated so often that they feel true. The good news is, just as you've conditioned your mind to accept limitations, you can recondition it to embrace possibility. You do this by intentionally feeding your mind with empowering thoughts. Instead of telling yourself, you're not ready, start telling yourself you are capable. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, train yourself to focus on how you will make things work. This shift in mental conditioning is what separates those who succeed from those who remain stuck. The key is consistency. You can't do this once and expect lifelong results. Just as a bodybuilder doesn't get strong by lifting weights one time, you won't develop mental strength unless you practice it daily. The way you start your morning, the thoughts you entertain throughout the day, the way you speak to yourself in moments of challenge, these are all opportunities to reinforce the mindset you want. This ties directly into the battle between emotions and logic. When your mind is uncontrolled, it is driven primarily by emotion. And emotions, while powerful, are often unreliable. Fear will tell you to avoid risks. Doubt will make you question your potential. Frustration will push you toward quitting. If you allow these emotions to dictate your decisions, you will always stay stuck. But when you train your mind, you learn to balance emotion with logic. You acknowledge your feelings, but you don't let them control your actions. An untrained mind will say, I don't feel like doing this today, and give in. A trained mind will recognize that emotions are temporary and push forward anyway. The truth is, success is not about how you feel in the moment. It's about the discipline to take action regardless of how you feel. This is why the strongest people in the world, in any field, don't wait for motivation. They create habits that keep them on track, even when they don't feel like it. They don't allow fleeting emotions to determine their long-term success. You have the power to do the same. You can train your mind to be an asset instead of a liability, but it requires a decision, one that only you can make. Will you let your emotions dictate your future, or will you take control and choose discipline over comfort? The answer to that question will determine the course of your life. Your mind is a powerful force, but if left unchecked, it can become your greatest enemy. One of the biggest struggles people face is the constant battle between their emotions and logic. An uncontrolled mind is reactive. It operates on impulse, driven by fear, doubt, and instant gratification. It makes decisions based on temporary emotions rather than long-term strategy. And when you allow emotions to dictate your actions, you become inconsistent, hesitant, and ultimately stuck in patterns that keep you from reaching your full potential. Think about how many times you've wanted to take action but let emotions get in the way. You planned to wake up early and work on your goals, but when the alarm went off, your emotions told you to hit snooze. You wanted to start a new project, but fear crept in and convinced you to wait for the right time. You were excited about an opportunity, but the moment doubt entered your mind, you backed away. This is what happens when emotions control your decisions. They push you toward what's comfortable instead of what's necessary for growth. The problem is that emotions are fleeting. They change moment to moment. And if you base your actions on them, you'll never be consistent. Successful people understand this. They know that their feelings are real, but they don't let them dictate their actions. They've trained their minds to operate from logic and discipline rather than emotion. When they feel tired, they push through. When fear arises, they acknowledge it but move forward anyway. When doubt creeps in, they replace it with action. This isn't about ignoring emotions. Emotions are important. They give you insight, they signal when something needs attention, and they make life meaningful, but they should never be in the driver's seat. When emotions take control, they exaggerate problems, amplify fears, and make obstacles seem bigger than they actually are. Logic, on the other hand, allows you to step back, assess the situation, and make decisions based on facts rather than feelings. For example, let's say you set a goal to improve your health. In the beginning, you're motivated, you feel excited about the idea of change, but as soon as discomfort sets in, when waking up early feels hard, when cravings hit, when progress seems slow, your emotions tell you to quit. They convince you that you're too tired, too busy, or that it's not worth the effort. If you follow those emotions, you fall back into old habits. But if you operate from logic, you remind yourself why you started, you push past the discomfort, and you stay committed even when you don't feel like it. The same applies to every area of life. Business, relationships, personal growth, none of them thrive under emotional decision-making. You need logic to guide your actions, discipline to keep you consistent, and self-awareness to recognize when emotions are leading you astray. This is what separates those who achieve their goals from those who continuously struggle. It's not about talent or intelligence. It's about mastering the ability to control your mind instead of letting it control you. Training your mind to operate from logic requires practice. The first step is awareness, recognizing when emotions are influencing your decisions. The second step is interrupting the pattern. When fear, doubt, or frustration arise, pause. Instead of reacting impulsively, ask yourself, what's the logical course of action here? Then, take action based on that answer, not based on how you feel in the moment. This is how you build mental toughness. The more you override emotional impulses with logical decision-making, the stronger your mind becomes. Over time, discipline replaces hesitation, consistency replaces inconsistency, and you become the kind of person who follows through no matter what. You have a choice. You can continue letting emotions dictate your actions, or you can take control and train your mind to lead with discipline and logic. One path leads to frustration, regret, and missed opportunities. The other leads to growth, success, and the ability to create the life you truly want. The decision is yours. Your mind is like a garden. If you don't intentionally plant and nurture the right thoughts, weeds of negativity will take over. An uncontrolled mind naturally gravitates toward fear, doubt, and procrastination. It's not because you're broken or incapable. It's because the mind is wired for survival, not success. Left unchecked, it will default to protecting you from discomfort, even if that means keeping you stuck in patterns of mediocrity. The destructive nature of negative thought patterns is what holds most people back. And unless you take control, these patterns will run your life. Think about the thoughts that dominate your mind daily. How often do you tell yourself, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, what if I fail? These aren't just harmless thoughts. They shape your reality. When your mind constantly feeds you reasons why something won't work, your actions or lack thereof reflect that belief. You hesitate, you procrastinate, you settle. And the worst part, you don't even realize that it's happening because it feels normal. The danger of negative thought patterns is that they don't just affect one moment. They compound over time. If every time you face a challenge, your first instinct is to focus on the worst case scenario, that pattern strengthens. If every time you make a mistake, you dwell on it instead of learning from it, self-doubt grows. Your mind is always listening, always reinforcing what you tell it. If you constantly feed it negativity, it will find more reasons to justify those thoughts. But just as negative patterns are built through repetition, they can also be broken through conscious effort. The first step is recognizing the patterns that hold you back. Pay attention to the moments when your mind automatically jumps to fear, doubt, or worst-case scenarios. When you catch these thoughts, don't just accept them, challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this fact or just a belief I've accepted as truth? Most of the time, you'll realize that these thoughts are just mental habits, not reality. Once you've identified these negative patterns, the next step is replacing them with empowering thoughts. Instead of saying, I can't do this, shift to, I am capable of figuring this out. Instead of, what if I fail? Ask yourself, what if I succeed? This isn't about blind positivity. It's about rewiring your brain to focus on possibilities instead of limitations. It's about training yourself to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats. Breaking negative thought patterns also requires action. Your mind believes what you repeatedly do. If you constantly avoid challenges, your brain reinforces the belief that you're incapable. But if you push yourself to take action despite fear, your mind starts to associate discomfort with growth rather than danger. The more you step outside your comfort zone, the weaker your negative thought patterns become. You must also be mindful of what you expose your mind to. The content you consume, the people you surround yourself with, and the conversations you engage in all shape your mental environment. If you constantly feed your mind negativity, news that instills fear, social media that breeds comparison, people who drain your energy, don't be surprised when your thoughts reflect that. Protect your mental space. Surround yourself with positivity, inspiration, and challenges that force you to grow. The truth is, your mind is either working for you or against you at all times. If you don't actively take control, it will default to negativity, self-doubt, and procrastination. But if you train it to focus on solutions, possibilities, and action, you can reprogram it to become your greatest asset. The choice is yours. Will you continue allowing negative thought patterns to dictate your life, or will you take control, rewrite your mental script, and create a future driven by confidence and growth? Your success depends on the answer. Most people believe that their circumstances define their success, but the truth is, it's not the situation that matters, it's how you respond to it. Your ability to shift your focus from problems to solutions is one of the most powerful mental skills you can develop. The way you think about challenges determines whether you stay stuck or move forward. An uncontrolled mind will always fixate on obstacles, magnifying them until they seem insurmountable. But a trained mind knows how to shift gears, redirect attention, and focus on what can be done rather than what stands in the way. When you dwell on problems, you reinforce a cycle of frustration and inaction. Your brain is wired to confirm whatever you focus on, so if you constantly tell yourself, this is too hard, I don't know what to do, or there's no way around this, your mind will find evidence to support that belief. You'll notice more reasons why something won't work, more excuses to stay stuck, and more justifications for giving up. The problem itself doesn't get bigger, but your perception of it does. On the other hand, when you train your mind to shift from problems to solutions, everything changes. Instead of saying, this is impossible, you ask, what's one thing I can do right now? Instead of thinking, I don't have the resources, you ask, how can I find them? Instead of focusing on what went wrong, you focus on what can be learned and applied moving forward. This simple shift in perspective transforms challenges from roadblocks into stepping stones. This is not about ignoring reality or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's about controlling your response. When faced with adversity, most people react emotionally. They panic, complain, or freeze in place. But none of those reactions change the situation. The only thing that changes your reality is action, and action only happens when you direct your mind towards solutions. Successful people are not immune to problems. They just have a different way of thinking. When they hit an obstacle, they don't waste energy on blame or frustration. They immediately shift into problem-solving mode. They ask better questions, seek creative solutions, and focus on what they can do rather than what they can't. This ability to stay resourceful under pressure is what separates those who succeed from those who remain stuck. The key to developing this mindset is to practice it daily. Train yourself to catch negative, problem-focused thinking before it spirals out of control. When you notice yourself getting overwhelmed, stop and ask, what is within my control right now? What's one step I can take to move forward? Who can I learn from to navigate this challenge? These questions shift your brain into an empowered state, helping you break free from the cycle of frustration and into action. Another important factor is surrounding yourself with solution-oriented people. If you constantly engage with those who complain, blame, and focus on what's wrong, their mindset will rub off on you. But if you spend time with people who focus on possibilities, take ownership of their actions, and seek growth, you will adopt those same habits. Your environment influences your thinking more than you realize, so choose wisely. This mindset applies to every area of life: business, relationships, personal growth. When you train yourself to focus on solutions instead of problems, you become resilient. You stop seeing setbacks as permanent and start viewing them as temporary challenges that can be overcome. You become the kind of person who adapts, learns, and pushes forward no matter what stands in the way. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. You can let your mind fixate on obstacles and keep you stuck, or you can take control, shift your focus, and train yourself to see opportunities where others see roadblocks. The moment you start focusing on solutions, you take back your power. And when you take back your power, nothing can stop you from achieving what you set out to do. The quality of your life is determined by the standards you set for yourself. If you allow an uncontrolled mind to dictate your actions, you will always operate at a level far below your true potential. People often think that external circumstances, where they were born, their financial situation, their past failures, are what hold them back. But the truth is, it's not their circumstances, it's their mindset, it's the expectations they have for themselves, and whether they demand more or settle for less. Your standards determine what you will and will not tolerate. They dictate your work ethic, your discipline, and the level of effort you put into everything you do. The problem is that most people operate from a place of convenience rather than commitment. They do what's easy instead of what's necessary. They set goals but don't hold themselves accountable. They say they want success, but when things get difficult, they lower their standards instead of raising their effort. An uncontrolled mind always seeks comfort over growth. It will convince you that skipping a workout is fine, that procrastinating is no big deal, that settling for good enough is acceptable. It will always find excuses, and if you don't challenge those excuses, they become your reality. This is why so many people remain stuck. They have trained themselves to accept mediocrity because they have never made the decision to raise their standards. Raising your standards is not about setting unrealistic expectations. It's about refusing to settle for less than what you are capable of. It's about creating non-negotiable rules for yourself. For example, if you set the standard that you will not make excuses, then no matter how tired you are, how busy you get, or how difficult the situation becomes, you find a way to follow through. If you set the standard that you will not let fear stop you, then regardless of how intimidating something seems, you take action anyway. The most successful people in the world did not get there by accident. They decided that certain behaviors, habits, and levels of performance were simply not acceptable in their lives. They hold themselves to a higher standard, and because of that, they achieve extraordinary results. They don't wait for motivation, they rely on discipline. They don't rely on circumstances, they create their own opportunities. They don't accept excuses, they demand more from themselves. This mindset applies to every area of life. If you want to be in great shape, you must set higher standards for your health and fitness. If you want financial success, you must set higher standards for how you manage money, how you develop your skills, and how you pursue opportunities. If you want strong relationships, you must set higher standards for how you communicate, how you support others, and how you show up for the people in your life. Most people believe they will rise to their goals, but in reality, they fall to the level of their standards. If your standard is to try your best, you will only push yourself as far as it feels comfortable. But if your standard is, I do whatever it takes, you will find a way no matter the circumstances. This is what separates those who succeed from those who merely dream. The key is to make the decision right now to raise your standards. Decide what is no longer acceptable in your life. Decide what level of discipline, consistency, and effort you will demand from yourself. Once you make this decision, commit to it fully. It won't be easy, and there will be moments when your mind tries to pull you back into old habits. But if you stay committed, if you refuse to negotiate with excuses, you will begin to operate at a higher level. Your mind will either work for you or against you, depending on the standards you set. Choose to expect more from yourself. Choose to operate with excellence. Choose to raise the bar, not just once, but every single day, because in the end, your standards define your future. And when you raise them, you raise the quality of your entire life.